Welcome to Hail Varsity Radio, the voice of Husker Nation. Insight, opinion, expertise, with the biggest and best names talking Nebraska across the state. Join the show on Twitter at Hail Varsity and at Schmidt_radio. Call in at 402-466-ESPN or 1-800-825-5865. Here's Chris Schmidt.
Welcome to it. It's Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Elijah Herbel in alongside Will Wilson as we're filling in for Chris out watching his son play some baseball today. We are going to hear from Chris here in a second. But man, Will, what a wild Friday for Husker News. I was up late last night watching College World Series, woke up this morning and saw the announcement that Bill Moos is retiring from his position as Nebraska Athletic Director.
Oh, man. It's a weird day.
We've got a
really weird day.
Yeah, we've got Schmidt on the phone line. He's ready to give you his thoughts on this. But before we bring him in, to read to you the announcement that Bill Moos sent out to the Husker athletic staff this morning just after 9 a.m. He said, "Today I announce my retirement as your Director of Athletics effective June 30th. I do so completely at peace with my decision and with pride in what we have collectively accomplished over the last 4 years. Our athletics program is reborn and rebuilt and has a solid and stable foundation for your future successes. While change is not always easy, I am so grateful that all of you were willing to embrace it and, in fact, thrive with it. The addition of talented colleagues, new organizational structures, and a new way of conducting our daily business. Our purpose has not changed, and you have not wavered in your commitment to our student athletes. That was never more evident than over the past year, as together we face the challenges from the pandemic with resolve and resiliency, protecting the health and safety of our students, coaches, and one another while ensuring the long-term stability of our department. I will leave it to others to detail our accomplishments over the last 4 years, though all of you understand that so much of what we were tasked to do occurred away from the spotlight. But the foundation is set. The brand is rebuilt. Now you and our teams can enjoy the successes of your hard work as we are now stronger than ever. I will continue to cheer on the Huskers from afar, and Lincoln will always be a part of our lives. Thank you for allowing me to serve alongside all of you." It's from Bill Moos this morning, his statement to the Husker athletic department. Let's bring in the voice of Hail Varsity Radio. It's Chris Schmidt. Even on an off day, he is not really off, as Chris had to get in here to give us his thoughts on this whole situation. Chris, it was just a bit of a slap in the face this morning, really, to see the news. I did not see this one coming.
No, and I tell you what, Elijah and Will, it's a situation that you're blindsided with this news. With things are so tenuous right now. What's Nebraska's football season going to be like in 2021? You're ramping up into the summertime. CWS is winding down, and big things are expected and wanted on the horizon. The thing that you want and you need is stability, right? And Bill Moos was the guy that was brought in here to provide stability to Nebraska athletics, to Nebraska football. And what did Bill Moos do? Bill Moos went out and got you Scott Frost. Bill Moos went out and got you Fred Hoiberg. And Bill Moos went out and got you Will Bolt. I mean, those are the three things you're going to think of with Bill Moos. As far as I'm the guy that can sit down with Mike Leach in Key West and get him to come to Wazoo, and he brought that act to Lincoln. And he's just the guy that I've always enjoyed chatting with, enjoyed getting to spend time with him at Big Ten Media Days from time to time over the years. And just a good dude, right? You can have a cup of coffee, a piece of pie, or something else with the Nebraska fan base. So Bill is a guy that Nebraska fans, I think, enjoyed his personality, his storytelling, and just what he brought. But don't kid yourself, man. This retirement's forced. This retirement is thanks, the fiscal year's done, the 30th of June. See ya. You look at a couple of different reports out there with the World Herald and Journal-Star, and Bill Moos was told goodbye. You're going to get to retire. You are going to retire, and that's that. We don't know if he's going to get his retention bonus $1.25 million. That's a question. So what happened? Did anything happen between the end of the Big Red Blitz to now? We don't know. There's been things that he's had to address. You go back about a year and a half when it comes to off the field, so to speak, right? When it comes to, his behavior. And the chancellor and president of the university came out at the time in full support of Bill Moos. I like Bill Moos. Now, the big sticking point is this: management style. What type of manager are you? Well, Mike Riley wasn't a hands-on football coach, really. That wasn't good, right? Sean, I, of course, didn't know that. Bill Moos, a lot of times, was not in Lincoln. And that's a problem. That's a problem when your bosses want you to be here doing your job. As athletic director, your job is to fundraise. You can glad hand, you can do radio interviews, you can be in front of the camera, and that's all good. How many sporting events are you attending? How many meetings are you having with your coaches on a regular basis? Was that going on, or were you at your ranch? And the other part of this, too, is football may need some oversight. Are you there to hold people in the football program accountable? Where is football at right now? 12-20. Not your fault. You made the hire. Everybody in red and white won it. Well, what's going on with football day to day? And the bottom line is this: it didn't feel like or sound like people we know and talk to as well that Moos was here enough. And you get through the pandemic, you got through that, and now it's time to move on and make a change. You've got a couple of people that you've delegated things to, along with an incredible staff down at Nebraska, that make sure the day-to-day is going well, whether you're there or not. And the last part of this, too, you look at the fundraising for the new football facility, $155 million. Hank Bounds and Matt Davison were the guys that went out and raised the money for that primarily. It's not that Bill Moos didn't have a part of that or a plan or a vision. No, he did. And Bill Moos has some tremendous leadership qualities, specifically the ability to talk to the guy. But when push comes to shove, it sounds like this is a forced retirement, and you got to be more hands-on, not micromanaged, but more hands-on with your position in the athletic department. That's how I see this. Guys, we can get into who's up next as far as AD, but tip your cap and thank Bill Moos for what he did at Nebraska. And he's a guy that you smile about, had some Devaney qualities to him as far as being able to relate and communicate with the fan base. Now, from a judgment standpoint, basketball, you're up, and you got to win ball games, and I think they will with Fred. Baseball, money higher. Will Bolt did a great job in his first full season. You're on the clock. Football, time to start winning games in the Big Ten.
Schmidt, a few thoughts here before we let you go. I guess we can kind of roundtable this one. But what's your take on the fact that, Bill Moos didn't even get a retirement press conference? I remember back to when Osborne retired, he got himself a retirement press conference. But today just seemed very out of the blue. Bill Moos even had an interview set up with ESPN's Adam Rittenberg up until last night whenever he finally canceled that. So is this a thing where, do you think Bill Moos was a little bit blindsided by this, considering he still had other engagements going this week?
I think he's blindsided about the timing of it. I think the retirement topic had been discussed. It's just a different timeline. Bill Moos's boss or bosses had a different timeline on when the old retirement party should happen. And that was 1 week ago, hey, you're retiring in a week. So that goes back to, did something happen between the Big Red Blitz and now to kind of be, all right, it's time to go? Or is it simply, listen, we're going to cut you loose, we're going to figure out some sort of compensation, and we'll let it go out that way when it comes to the retention bonus. Maybe it's cost savings. So yeah, this is awkward, this is sloppy, this is weird, specifically when you have a Board of Regents meeting, and the Board of Regents are like, oh, really? Bill Moos is retiring? I'm air quoting here as we're driving.
Two hands on the wheel, 10-2.
I'm riding in the back seat here next to the monkey. But no, legit. Yeah, it was a shock to some of the Board of Regents, and it's a shock to Nebraska football fans. This had probably been in the works, but again, it's two different timelines. Bill Moos's timeline, he isn't going to be able to see office these hires and when it finally pops for football and basketball. He'll see it. He just won't be a part of Nebraska.
Hey, Schmitty, I want to ask you, looking back at Moose's time here, the last 4 years, what's the number one most important thing he did, in your opinion?
Well, he came in and he healed, right? You had a divided fan base. You had people pissed off Bo wasn't coaching. You had people pissed off that Riley was a flop. You had people ticked off about Sean Eichhorst, Harvey Perlman. I mean, go down the list. Go down the old Nebraska family tree in the last 20 years of angst, on top of the fact there hasn't been a lot of wins. And what Bill Moos did is come in and sit down with the guy who is harvesting crops or the guy that has a hedge fund. He united the fan base, and then he went out and he got the hires that made you excited about Nebraska football. Now, the hires, again, got to produce. The point is Nebraska was a player. Nebraska had an inside track to get Scott Frost because he's a Husker legend. Well, the point is Nebraska still had to outspend and beat Florida, Tennessee, and really Central Florida, right, to get it. Bill Moos made that happen with the help of Matt Davis. Bill Moos, go ahead. Bill Moos also able to get Fred Hoiberg. Man, you got a big-time basketball coach, and people really liked Miles. But you got a proven winner in Fred, at least from his time at Iowa State. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I mean, I don't think it's contestable that Bill Moos has left this program in a better place than it was whenever he started. We're going to get in this a little bit more after DiNardo comes on here in about 10 minutes. But it's just... when you look at the football program, it was heading in a downward direction whenever Bill Moos stepped in. The basketball program looked like it had stagnated. The men's baseball program as well. And it just seems all of those programs now have new life that have been breathed into them. And with these trajectories moving upward, my question is just, do you think Nebraska's got a top target in mind of someone they want to replace Moos with?
Here's what I think about the replacement. You've got candidates that are near to you. You got Classy that's been kind of running things anyway, right? If Bill's not been around as much as he needed to be, his guys there. The interim is an option. Trev Alberts is up the road. I don't know how that would be received. There's still a lot of ticked off folks at UNO from football and wrestling, but Trev's definitely an option, and he's been doing it. You hear Jamie Pollard. Why leave Iowa State for Nebraska? And I never thought I'd say that in my life, but it's true. But it's true, right? I mean, why leave what you built up at Iowa State? He's been there 16 years, and he just re-signed a contract. Ed Stewart's a Nebraska name that's done administrative work in the Big 12 office. Our old boy Garth Glissman got mentioned by our friends at the Journal-Star as kind of an out-of-the-box guy. Garth, probably not. Just a hunch right now with what he's doing in the NBA. And, the name that I would put first on my list is Hank Bounds. He's been a fundraiser. He's an old football coach from Mississippi. He's an administrator, but he gets sports and he gets football, and he was part of what helped raise that money for you for this new facility. I think Hank Bounds is the guy you go with. Now, the dynamic with that is, you're going to have old Ted there, and Ted replaced was the guy who replaced Hank. Okay, so do you want your predecessor around? Just a question. Okay, and then Ronnie Green. Does Ronnie want his old boss there? So those are questions. Okay, those are questions. But Hank, to me, is a guy who's administratively smart, absolutely knows sports and football, and would be big time for Nebraska. Matt Davison is a name that you hear and see on every list. He's right-hand guy to Frosty, and he's respected and loved in the state. I need a guy with AD experience to come in, especially after what Nebraska's been through. You know, it's a revolving door of ADs. You think how many that have been through here, guys? Mm-hmm. It's you need some
8.
long-term stability. I like Hank Baum. That's who I'm drafting.
8 is the number.
Yeah, and there hasn't been an AD who has outlived his head coach since the 1990s. But Schmitty, we'll let you get back to your weekend off. Still joining us on your day off. That's Chris Schmidt for you. No days off for the man. But Chris, enjoy the weekend off, and thanks for some insight.
Hey, guys, appreciate you, and thanks for covering me today in the ball. Appreciate y'all.
Oh, we got you. Drive safe, Chris. Got Gerry DiNardo coming up after the break. Going to get his take. You hear him on the BTN, his take on this whole situation. We also have Bill Doleman and Derek Peterson coming up next hour. All that still to come on Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery.
And we're back
Fellas, you think we could listen to the radio lesson?
on Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery.
Yes! That's awesome! Back in on a news-heavy Friday. Who was expecting this one? We kind of got used to the news dump Fridays from Nebraska last summer, but it's been a while. But I guess weather's warming back up. College World Series back in town. Nebraska decided it was time for another news dump Friday. We've learned Bill Moos out as athletic director at Nebraska. We're going to welcome in college football analyst for Big Ten Network. It's where you hear him. Gerry DiNardo joining us now on Hail Varsity Radio. Excited to get a bit more of a national perspective on what this Bill Moos news means for the state of Nebraska and for the Big Ten. Gerry, it's good to talk to you today. How you doing on this? I guess it's a lovely Friday here. Got rainstorms rolling through shortly, but for now it's beautiful here in Lincoln.
I'm doing great, thanks, and appreciate you having me.
Yeah, no, we appreciate you joining us. So I just want to, right off the bat, get your take on this. It was a surprising news dump this morning from Nebraska telling us that Bill Moos, well, I'm going to put retired in air quotes, as seems to be that he was told he's retiring effective next week. What's your take on it, and what does it mean for Nebraska that Bill Moos is now out?
Yeah, it's never a good thing to have change, especially at an untimely point, during the season, during building a program. I know this is more than football, but obviously, I follow the football the closest. So, as a football coach, you always want to have the athletic director that hired you to have a partnership with him or her. Because it's tough building a program, and I think, Nebraska historically has been a great football program, but in recent years it's been tough, and I don't know that change is good. I don't know why there was change, and I just say that this is another hurdle I think that Scott Frost is going to have to get over to continue to build his program.
Yeah, and from your experience just as a head football coach in the Big Ten and elsewhere as well, just what kind of pressure do you think it's going to put on Scott Frost now, knowing he's got a different athletic director he's got to get to know, A, and then B, sell himself to?
Well, again, you always want to partner. That doesn't mean it can't work. It doesn't mean that somebody else can't come in and develop a partnership with Scott and all the other coaches. It's just different, and at times it's hard. And I think that everybody was so excited when Scott got to Nebraska, and I think people still are. But everybody wants to see the product on the field get a little bit better, and having an AD that's supportive of you, that you can go to for advice and counsel, and someone that you feel is in the foxhole with you. I think that's always important. having said that, that could happen. It could be an internal candidate. It could be an external candidate. It's just one other thing that you now have to deal with when you wish you didn't have to deal with it while you're building a program.
We're talking to Gerry DiNardo. Gerry, back when you were coaching, think about some of your ADs. Were they more hands-on with the football program? Like, did they really kind of look over the football program? I would expect here in Nebraska, the AD should have kind of an outlook over the football program more than others. Do you agree with that?
No, not necessarily. I think there's a lot of different ways that an AD can manage. My experience with, my head coaching job at Vanderbilt, I had the same AD the whole time, and that was helpful. He hired me, and I left while he was still the AD. At LSU, I had Joe Dean, who was a great AD, and he wanted me to stay on. Mark Emmert was the one that fired me. Because he had come in late and he wanted his own coach, kind of like a team owner. And then Indiana, I had 3 ADs and 3 presidents and 6 mission statements in a short time. So every AD could manage differently. I think an AD that thinks maybe he knows as much football as you do, I think sometimes those kind of ADs are problems. But I don't know that an AD has to know a bunch about football to be a really good AD for a football coach. He or she could be expertise in another sport. And it's about leadership, and it's about mentoring, and it's about, having somebody you can talk to. You have a problem, you want to hear different solutions. So the relationship is just so important. It doesn't have to be based on X's and O's. It's more based on leadership and trying to solve problems with someone someone that's not on your staff. I think it's always good as a head coach, regardless of the sport, if you're having a problem, sometimes you want to get input from someone that you're not with every day. And I think Joe Dean at LSU for me was a great resource. He was a basketball coach. He was a basketball player. But he was a great resource because he was a great leader, so I could lean on him. So he didn't have to know a lot about the game.
Gerry DiNardo's with us here on Hail Varsity Radio. And Coach, what the Nebraska university system as a whole is saying is pretty much nothing regarding this whole retirement/firing of Bill Moos. Mum's been the word, so we don't really know what led to this. But the Omaha World Herald reported this morning that one of the sticking points was Bill Moos's absence from the stadium on most days, oftentimes at his ranch or just simply out of the office. And whenever you're a football coach who's looking to rebuild the program, is it beneficial to have that AD? I know we're discussing that same topic last question, but just would you prefer to have an AD that's hands-on, or would you personally prefer to have an AD that's hands-off?
This is my feeling about it, and I have done some search work as well where I've helped ADs try to find a head football coach. And my advice, based on my experience, and this will answer your question pretty directly, I believe the head football coach, and maybe other head coaches, again, I'm just speaking to a head football coach. This could be a head women's basketball coach, it could be a volleyball coach, it could be a basketball coach, but I felt like the head football coach and the athletic director should have a meeting once a week, every day of the week. You always schedule it. It's 9:30 on Thursday morning, and if one of you can't make it, you cancel it. It could be 5 minutes, it could be 10 minutes, it could be 4 hours. You have to in my opinion, the athletic director has to constantly communicate with his or her coaches. You just have to do it. And you can't do that if you're not on campus, obviously. And so I think the best ADs don't necessarily assign an assistant athletic director to a sport. I was interviewing for a head coaching job, which I got. It was at Indiana, and the athletic director told me that I was going to be reporting to an associate athletic director. And I didn't think that was the best way to go, and I still don't, even though they're all so very busy. So to answer your question, I think a meeting once a week scheduled. You won't always make it because things will come up, but the expectation is that we're going to try to meet once a week throughout the year, and when we cancel, we cancel. But I wouldn't want it to go more than 2 or 3 weeks without face-to-face talking about things.
Now, Moos had repeatedly said that Scott Frost's job is safe despite the results over the last 3 years. And if you take off that coach's hat or headset, if you will, and put back on your analyst hat, when you look at this, do you think this is a decision that gives Scott Frost a shorter leash, bringing in a new AD who I assume is going to want results out of his top money earner at Nebraska?
Yeah, so hard to tell, and I don't know, but I'll go back to how our conversation here started. I don't know that there's a coach, regardless of what sport, that wants to work for someone other than the person that picked them, because when the athletic director picks you, he or she is in the same boat. They feel the same way. They hired you because they liked what you've done. They like what you projected to do. When a new AD comes in, they may never have hired you. Again, I go back to my personal experience. Joe Dean at LSU didn't fire me. Mark Emmert fired me, who became in as the chancellor after I was there for 4 years. And we had won the first 3 years, and then Emmert really never saw us do anything good because we won 3 bowl games in a row, and then 4th or 5th year we struggled. I wanted the 6th year. I thought I had earned that, but there was nothing that Emmert could see. He didn't see that we took over a program that lost for 6 straight years, turned it around the first 3 years, and then hit hard times. So someone coming in now that didn't hire you doesn't know all the work that you have done just to get maybe to 3 or 4 or 5 wins. And so there's a disconnect when you change who you report to.
We're talking to Gerry DiNardo. Gerry, kind of grade the job for us, the AD job in Nebraska. I mean, from an outside point of view, would you take the job?
Well, I don't know that I know enough about Nebraska. I certainly don't know enough about being an athletic director to grade the Nebraska AD job. I go way back to Nebraska. I mean, I played in a game that was Bob Devaney's last game in the 1972 Orange Bowl. I've been an admirer of Tom Osborne. I visited Tom Osborne when I was the head coach at Vanderbilt, because before that I was at Colorado, and I don't think that he would have welcomed me on campus. And so I've been a great fan of the entire Nebraska program, the university, the whole operation. What's going on now, what's gone on since they fired I guess Frank, it's been so up and down. I think it just shows you that it's so hard to get back to a championship level. And I firmly believe Nebraska will be a championship program. I don't know when, but I have this belief if you have greatness in your past, you can have greatness in your present and in your future. And I would say that Nebraska has greatness in its past. And so in my mind, it's just the right coach, the right situation. Hopefully that's Scott. If it's not, it'll happen someday, because of my belief, greatness in the past dictates that you can have it in the present and future.
Last thought here, Gerry, and it was from this morning. Bill Moos releasing his statement saying, I believe we've built a solid foundation for what's to come for Nebraska athletics, but Nebraska is now going to be on to its 3rd athletic director since joining the Big Ten. So do you think that Bill Moos has given the program that stability that he says he did?
Yeah, I don't know that it's fair. I don't know enough about that fair for me to answer, guys. I mean, I just, I mean, you all follow Nebraska so much closer than I do, and you're there every day and watch what's going on. I don't think I'm qualified to answer that question. I am qualified to say what I just said, that Nebraska is a great place, and they will once again have greatness. I just don't know, and I don't know that anybody knows when, but I think we all know this environment nowadays is much harder to build back a championship program than it's ever been before.
Well, Gerry, we'll let you go on that. Appreciate you taking the time out of your Friday to join us here on Hail Varsity Radio. So we're talking Bill Moos's departure from Nebraska. Gerry, what's on the docket for you tonight? Have you been following any College World Series, or you got something on the stovetop?
No, actually, I've been in Colorado for a month. I live in Florida, and this time of year it's pretty hot. So I've been in Colorado since before Memorial Day. I've got a little bit more time here, and then I'll eventually work myself back home. I got a couple more stops, so I'm just kind of, I guess, messing around, if you will. I haven't watched the College World Series. I follow it on Twitter, so I kind of have idea who's still playing and who's winning. But been reading my magazines, doing my research, so that I'm getting ready for the season. I guess our media days, I think the 22nd or 23rd, I can't remember. So I'm trying to get ready for some of that, and really excited that we're going to have full stadiums and that the worst of COVID's behind us.
Yeah, well, Gerry, enjoy your weekend, and thanks for joining us. We'll get caught up again soon.
You bet. Thanks, guys.
Ace Conversations, just the care you need.
Thanks to Hims, we got our sex life and our marriage back.
To start your free online visit, go to this exclusive address, forhims.com/love. That's forhims.com/love for your free online visit. forhims.com/LOVE.
Chime in 402-466-ESPN or email the show, Chris@HailVarsity.com.
Just try me.
Back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Back in on a Friday, it's Hail Varsity Radio presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Just a loaded show today as we're reacting to news that Bill Moos has been, or I guess retired. I'm just going to keep doing air quotes there, retired as Nebraska football head, athletic director. And, I mean, let's be honest here. The man was forced out. This has, courtesy retirement written all over it. He said 2 months ago when he was up for that Pac-12 job, I plan on staying here until my contract is run out, until my contract is expired. Still a year and a half left on the contract. The fact that he had multiple interviews lined up this week with both Nebraska reporters and with ESPN's Adam Rittenberg.
Yeah, that's fishy.
And the fact that this happens a week before the fiscal year ends.
And, Schmidt made a good point, how something had to have happened before the big red blitz. Now, let's say something didn't. Let's say this is something that's been dragging on for the past few months, and it was an issue when the Pac-12 job was a discussion. If, they wanted to make a move, wouldn't they have made the move then? Maybe Moos took the job. I don't know. But, Elijah, you nailed it. There's no way Moos retired on his own goodwill.
No, this is not a decision from the Moos.
He straight up said to the Omaha World Herald that, what was the quote? I was told.
Yeah, I was told I will be retiring at the end of next week. Apparently, this is the best time to do it.
Mm-hmm.
That just has, this is not my decision, I don't want to leave written all over it. Let's hear from Ronnie Green. He had, as Chris was saying, the Regents met this morning, and on their way out, some reporters asked Ronnie Green some questions, and he gave his view, his perspective on Bill Moos's announced retirement from this morning.
I'll let Bill speak to that. I know he's speaking to that himself, and he made that decision, and so we really respect his decision, and have really nothing further to say. Well, we've been talking about it for a couple. Yeah, have nothing further to say. Thank you.
So he got cut off a little bit whenever the mic got jostled, but he said, we've been talking about this for a couple weeks, which I don't buy. The fact that you even brought him out on the Big Red Blitz and had him go meet with all the fans across the state, I don't think that's something you do if you know, next week we're going to have you retire, Bill.
Okay, so we have the quote from Moos. That's one piece of evidence. Okay, the other piece of evidence is, let's see, I'm trying to remember all of these things, Elijah. The one thing you mentioned is the press conference.
Mm-hmm.
You remember the last AD to retire here obviously was Osborne, and that was special. That's more special than Moos retiring, right? But nonetheless, I think most ADs that retire at a school that they had a good connection to would get a ceremony.
And would probably get a hand in selecting the next AD as well,
or a press conference the day of it happening. Because let's be real, the news was very, urgent. Right? Unexpected.
Abrupt.
So that's another piece of evidence. There wasn't a press conference. More evidence proving that this was just abrupt and out of the blue, making it more look like Moos was fired. Third piece of evidence. The main reports, the first initial reports that were coming out, weren't they all saying he was fired pretty much?
He was out, was the quote. He was out as Nebraska AD.
Out, but there were some other people using the word, what were they saying? I don't remember. I remember, but Bleacher Report their first update they put out, their mass update to smartphones, it said fired. It said Nebraska fires Bill Moos. That was what everyone was thinking.
Yeah, and so my first reaction upon seeing the news this morning was that if he had actually retired, that he seems like the type of guy who crosses his T's, dots his I's, and would have a replacement lined up. So I went back and looked at the Tom Osborne, and Eichhorst was announced 2 weeks after Osborne announced his own retirement at his own press conference. And Eichhorst came 2 weeks later. We know now that Osborne didn't have as much of a hand in it, but Nebraska and Moos in particular seems like the type of guy that would have a press conference and would have a successor lined up for some sort of abrupt retirement like this.
That's a good point.
And if you've been talking about it for weeks, you would think that, again, you would have somebody lined up. And I don't know, do we have someone on the phones or no?
No, we don't. I'm just laughing at this whole situation because let's not fool ourselves. Let's not.
Yeah, who is the university fooling here? No, I don't think anybody in this state that actually follows the program but actually believes that Bill Moos retired of his own accord here.
Mm-hmm. Well, and if we're looking for why this happened, we have no clue. There's reports out saying that the athletic department has been, different the past few weeks, different in a bad way. Just the environment. We don't know. But nonetheless, I thought Moos did do a lot of good things.
And we heard from Sipple this morning that he talked to some, in his words, high-ranking officials from the Nebraska athletic department, saying that a lot of them were caught blindsided by this as well. They didn't see this one coming, that it was just out of the blue.
Nobody did.
And from my time working, I worked with Husker Vision, which is small fish in the Husker athletic department. But from my time there, it was whenever any sort of news like this broke, it filtered through, and you'd know about a week before the news broke.
Usually.
About a week before you would know something's up. Moos is going to be out at the end of the week. We're not quite sure. But it seems to me that this was Ronnie Green or some high-ranking official at UNL coming down and saying, all right, Bill, we're going to thank you for your service here, but at the end of the week, it's time for you to go. Do you want to be fired or do you want to retire?
Hey, if people are, hearing about kids transferring before they even hit the portal, there's definitely a good chance we would have heard of Bill Moos retiring.
Exactly.
That's just my opinion.
We want your thoughts on this. You can give us a call, 402-466-3776. Again, that's 402-466-ESPN or 1-800-825-5865. We'll get your quick takes here as we got about a minute left in this segment, a few minutes left before the end of the hour. We already had Gerry DiNardo in this hour, as well as Chris joining us back in the first segment as he's got the day off, but he doesn't really take days off. He wanted to come in and give his opinion on this whole situation. Coming up next hour, Bill Doleman leading off the hour. It's our second straight day with Bill as he joined us yesterday as we were at the College World Series, coming back in for this announcement. And we also have Derek Peterson joining us next hour as we're going to get a little bit into the potential candidates coming up. We got somebody on the phone lines, but I think we're going to hold them over until
we're going to hold them until next segment. I believe Derek Peterson, he was scheduled to talk to Moos too.
Mm-hmm, he was, and that interview got pushed off. It was supposed to be, I believe, Wednesday, and then it got pushed back to Friday, and then it was eventually canceled. So it's not like Adam Rittenberg was the only person who had an interview lined up. This was multiple people.
Yeah, but totally unrelated thought. Was Moos just doing a big news dump at the end of this week? I mean, it seemed like everybody was getting scheduled an interview with Moos, and it was canceled. I don't know, totally unrelated to the retirement. Just saying, it's funny.
Get more thoughts on this Bill Moos situation after the break. Caller, what's the callers on the line?
Oh, we got Tim Bob coming up next.
Tim Bob's coming up next. You hear me on ESPN Lincoln. He's after the break. Again, Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Wrapping up hour one here on Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. It's Elijah Herbel and Will Wilson filling in for Chris Schmidt. But man, we got a lot to talk about as we're reacting to the news that Bill Moos has been let go / retired as Nebraska athletic director. Before we get to the phone lines, got to remind you that nearly 70% of people in fatal crashes in Nebraska are not wearing a seatbelt. If used properly, a seatbelt can reduce the risk of fatal injury by up to 60% in a crash. Your best defense So buckle up. It's a message brought to you by the Nebraska Department of Transportation Highway Safety Office. Let's go to the phones now, though, as we got a proud member of the ESPN Lincoln C team. You hear him broadcasting high school games, Will Wilson and Tim Bob. They're a great duo, and we got Tim Bob on the lines now. Tim, just overall, how surprised are you about this news today that Bill Moos has, quote-unquote, retired as Nebraska athletic director?
Well, I think like everybody else, it's kind of come out of a bit of surprise. Now, I don't know that it hasn't been building for a while. You know, I mean, there's if you remember a few years ago, there was some sharp criticism of Bill drinking. Obviously, there's been some, reports of him, not spending much time in Nebraska, and I think you also have to consider his age with the COVID scare and all those things consideration. So it may have just been a mutual, parting of the ways, and I'm not reading anything into it. It just seems like it's a bit of a surprise for everybody, and there's a lot of speculation, but it may have been coming for a while.
Hey, Tim Bob, since Osborne, rank Moos among all the ADs you've seen.
I guess I wasn't a fan of any of them between Moos and Osborne.
Oh yeah.
I don't think any of them were stellar, and obviously they managed the decline of Nebraska athletics, certainly Nebraska football. I really liked Moos. I thought he was a great spokesman. He certainly had the poise and the presence, and he knew the game. I remember Schmidt was talking to Mike Leach yesterday about working for Bill Moos, and nothing but praise from the Pirate about that. So I would say Moos's, tenure is going to be interesting. I do think building and rebuilding the program was a much, much bigger job than anybody anticipated when he took the job or when Scott took the job. And we've seen that over the last several years, that it's been a much bigger project, to turn around the program. And I think the program was in much worse shape, maybe internally behind the scenes, than the average fan would know. So, it'll be time to tell whether Moos was the guy who, as he said, put it on firm footing and put it back where it can build. Obviously, there's a lot of the new facilities are being built, and the footing for that. There's a lot of excitement, I think, still in Nebraska, but we're ready for Scott Frost to put the product on the field. But he certainly made some key hires. You can say that.
Tim Bob, appreciate the call, brother. We're up against a hard break as we're wrapping up hour one.
Let's call some football games soon. All right.
Hey, man, let's do it. I'm ready.
All right, man.
Football season can't be here soon enough.
Hey,
thanks, guys.
Enjoy your weekend, Tim Bob.
It was Tim Bob here on ESPN Lincoln, as just everyone's calling in with their thoughts and reactions to Bill Moos and him retiring, quote unquote. I'm going to do it again as athletic director at the University of Nebraska. We got Bill Doleman coming up next hour. Second time this week. Second time in 2 days we're talking with Bill Doleman, as I'm sure he's going to be on fire about this one.
You're going to want to stay there.
Yeah, it's Hail Varsity Radio presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Bill Doleman's next.
About how you too can live and serve part-time close to home by visiting NationalGuard.com.
Sponsored by the Nebraska Army National Guard. Aired by the Nebraska Broadcasters Association at this station.
Welcome to Hail Varsity Radio, the voice of Husker Nation. Insight, opinion, expertise, with the biggest and best names talking Nebraska across the state. Join the show on Twitter at Hail Varsity and at Schmidt_radio. Call in at 402-466-ESPN or 1-800-825-5865. Here's Chris Schmidt.
Back in, it's hour 2 on this Friday edition of Hail Varsity Radio. Chris Schmidt has today and tomorrow off. We're going to be back on Monday up at the College World Series to kick off the first game of the championship series. In the meantime, taking you through the rest of the show today, and I'll be in tomorrow morning for the Saturday morning edition of Hail Varsity Radio, as well as looking forward to getting Brandon Vogel and Gary Sharp's take on this whole situation with Nebraska Athletic Director Bill Moos retiring today, effective next week. I believe we have Bill Doleman here on the phone lines. The second time in 2 days that Bill has joined us here on Hail Varsity Radio. He's a staple. You love him. But, Bill, my first question to you is, are you tired of us yet?
Well, Schmitty said we were going to talk Olympic archery, modern pentathlon, and race walking sometime soon. So that's what I assumed the phone call was 24 hours later. That's why we're here.
Interesting. Okay, here, I could do that. I actually just learned the other day, Bill, that race walking was a thing. I didn't even know that.
It is a thing, and oftentimes what you see in race walking is total carnage. So I'm anxious to bring that to the masses for the Olympics coming up here in a month.
Can you explain the sport to me? Is it what it sounds like, race walking?
Going to be honest with you, I've never called it before, but yeah, that's pretty much it.
Okay, gotcha.
Where do I apply? How to get into the Olympics for race walking?
I saw a race walk from Rio. I didn't call it, but I watched it, and I'm not exactly sure that's a race that you necessarily want to partake in. Like the leader of the race took a header and they carted him off, and other people, sometimes put their entire bodies into it, and therefore, it can be messy. But nevertheless, it's one of the sports that I'll have for the Olympics. So, again, I appreciate you calling to talk about all that today, because there's really nothing else going on.
Yeah, I'll stick to the beer mile, though, instead of race walking. That's just, beer mile, every quarter mile, drink a beer. I can do that one.
Yeah, good idea.
Yeah, Bill, but we do have to get your take on this whole Bill Moos situation. You were inside the Nebraska Athletic Department for years, so I think you have a bit of a different opinion than most of the fans watching this situation right now. So, I mean, right off the bat, I think it's pretty clear that this was not a decision from Bill Moos to retire effective right now. He could have been thinking about retirement, but for it to come today, this was from a higher up, correct?
Well, first of all, I apologize because I've said many times on the show, my career path, I had hoped would one day take me into the athletic director's chair at Nebraska, but I decided to get into television, so all of this is my fault. So I apologize.
Thanks, Bill.
We would have had stability from now until the end of time. Well, I think it's pretty clear that, when I first heard about this really early this morning out here in Denver, it had gotten here, and it was out before the university released its statement. So, there are those hints and things that you read between the lines, and sometimes they're just really big, bright neon signs that tell you kind of what's going on if you can figure it out. Yeah, I don't think there's any question that this may not have necessarily been a one-sided decision on the part of Bill Moos to step aside. And I think maybe the word that stands out most to me today is apparently, when he said apparently now is the time. Mm-hmm. I could see, maybe naively that maybe he was ready to near the end of his tenure as Nebraska's athletic director, because I think it's a pretty well-known story and has been for, the last year or two, that he spends a lot of time not in Lincoln. And that is somewhat problematic. I mean, I'm sure he's got a wonderful ranch in eastern Washington to go to, but at the same time, you want to be at that desk for your people as much as you possibly can, whether there's a pandemic or not. But when you see that comment say apparently now is the time, then that leaves a lot of room for speculation that the decision was more the university's than necessarily his. I think Ronnie Green is an admirable guy. I think he's a terrific leader. And clearly I think Nebraska is going in the direction that it wants to go sooner than perhaps Bill Moos had planned.
We're talking to Bill Doleman. Bill, looking at when Moos got here and to this time now, all the head coach hires, countless other things. What was the most important thing you thought Bill Moos did during his time here?
I think this may be a little bit different than what other people are saying. I think that, and I really believe this, I think that Nebraska had somebody in the athletic director's chair that could identify with Nebraskans, and Nebraskans could identify with him. I don't feel like we, and I say that as a Nebraskan, but even though I haven't lived in Lincoln for a while, I try to stay as close to as I possibly can. I just got the sense that for the first time in a long time, other than with Coach Osborne, all right, that's just a completely different story. But I think people probably felt connected to the athletic director's chair for the first time in a long, long time. And you go through the Bill Byrne era, and I think Bill Byrne in my lifetime, is one of the great athletic directors that we've seen in the last 30 plus years in collegiate athletics. And I think maybe there's just a handful of maybe 3 or 4 that I would consider in that class. But, Bill comes in from Oregon, and nobody knew him at all. And, you can speculate all you want as to who might succeed Bill Moos. Bill Byrne came from out of nowhere. And I think, was probably in his mid to late 40s at the time that he got hired. But it took a long time for Bill, and I don't think he ever necessarily fully rooted himself into the hearts of Nebraskans, but I think he became more adjusted to it. And I think people became more adjusted to him over time. There was always Tom. But with Steve Peterson, who was one of us, I don't think anybody felt connected to Steve after he came back. It just seemed like this is not the same guy that we thought that he was, and it turned out the way that he, ruled at Nebraska did not fit in. Sean Eichhorst clearly had no concept of what was going on in Lincoln at all. And I think I think Bill Moos came in, and I think people felt like, we're comfortable with this guy. He does seem to be one of us. And I think that's been really, really important for the culture of Nebraska football, Nebraska basketball, all the Nebraska athletics to the state of Nebraska. Now, he did what people wanted to do, and that was hire Scott. He brought in, Fred Hoiberg. He's got some great coaching hires, it appears. And I still say give Scott time, and I think Fred Hoiberg time. And to get the new facility kick-started. There are a lot of things in place thanks to Bill Moos, whether he was 100% involved, which, apparently that may not necessarily have been the case in bringing the money in for the facility. But I think Nebraska is in a much better place than it was before he arrived. And I think that's really, really important. And I think people may be connected more to that chair than they had been, because of what some really bad hires had been in the past.
Bill Doleman's with us here on Hail Varsity Radio for the second straight day, and we love talking to Bill. And Bill, my question to you is, Bill Moos has been well documented as being a hands-off athletic director. So that was one of the sticking points, according to the Omaha World Herald's report this morning. His tendency to not attend Husker home games, his tendency to not be in the office, and to be more of an administrator than that hands-on athletic director. So if Nebraska does do what we expect and go out and find an athletic director that is going to be more hands-on, what does that mean for Scott Frost in the football program? Do you think it's warning bells and that Scott Frost got a shorter leash now?
No, I think that whoever comes into that chair has to understand that there is loyalty not just to football, but there's loyalty and commitment to every program. And, the athletic department is its own department, but to every office within the athletic department, that everybody has ownership in the facility. And it's not just football. It's not just Scott Frost and Fred Hoiberg and whatnot. Whoever the new athletic director is, you're in charge of everything. Yes, you have deputies who might be the AD for basketball, the AD for women's athletics, the senior women's administrator. But still, if you're the athletic director, you have oversight over every program. You have oversight over every bathroom. Okay? I mean, this is an all-encompassing job, so it just can't be the guy who gets on the private plane and goes to meet with donors and says, we're going to get it done at Memorial Stadium this year. You've got to show a commitment to Heather Brink. You've got to show a commitment to Rhonda Revelle and the softball program. You've got to show a commitment. Is there anybody happier right now than Brett Ballack, the new men's golf coach who just got hired 3 days ago? Yeah. I mean, he's got the gig, right? And the guy that hired him is now gone. I think he's probably okay.
Yeah.
But you got to be willing to not just get on the private planes and the charters to go to football games. You got to be willing to get on that bus sometimes and to go to that women's golf match, or to go watch rifle for a little while. To spend some time on the soccer pitch to make sure that the field looks good, right? I mean, it's an all-encompassing job. It just cannot be about making the football coaches happy anymore. I don't think this puts added pressure on Scott Frost. Scott's got a pretty nice contract that Nebraska is going to have to continue to take a look at. No matter what the wins and losses are after the pandemic here and what's been lost. But so I don't look at it as just how is Scott Frost feeling today? Now, I think it's everybody. I think everybody's got to feel like, do we have somebody? And I do think that was probably that it is a problem that Bill was not necessarily there. But is the guy who's going to sit in that chair, does he care about me and my program and my student athletes? And that's what's important. And when I was at Nebraska in the 80s as a student and in the 90s working, everybody in the athletic department felt as though they had some ownership in it, in part because of Tom Osborne's character and integrity and his presence, but also because Bill Byrne, I think did what he could to make sure everybody, felt as though they were also a part of it. Football was pretty much on autopilot during Bill's tenure, so Bill had his hands in on everything else, and that's very, very important. It's not just about, football right now.
We're talking to Bill Doleman. Looking at the AD job as a whole, I rember when Moos got here, he said that this was a job that people run to. Do you think that's still the truth?
I do, because people still care. And I, read the Big Red Caravan this past week didn't have, massive attendances, and I get all that, but people still care. And I say this, about jobs in my profession as a sportscaster, as a play-by-play announcer. And I don't mean this to diminish, say, for example, the University of Colorado, and I take some shots at them every now and then. Mark Johnson's a great professional broadcaster. He's the voice of the Colorado Buffaloes. But as the voice of the Buffs, you are pretty much whispering into a waterfall, because you have the Broncos and you have the Nuggets and you have the Avs and you have all of this other stuff going on around, that it's not exactly a huge job. When you're the voice of the Huskers, it is a massive job. When you're the voice of the Wyoming Cowboys, it is a massive job, because that's the focal point of the state, and there's a fan base that is, incredibly passionate and interested. And the same holds true for athletic director positions. When, you've got major metropolitan universities like in L.A. or in Dallas or in Miami, there's so much else going on that really the only people who are interested are maybe devoted alums. But Nebraska commands attention. Whether there's a lot of success or things are not going well, people still know and talk about Nebraska. That's why Bill Moos, the fact that he's stepping down today is national news. It is major news. More so than when, say, Jeff Long got fired at Kansas, a couple of months ago. It was like, well, Les Miles is gone, and so is Jeff Long. Who's the next AD at KU? Bill Moos stepping down to Nebraska is coast-to-coast border. I just read a story from Nepal about it, So it is still a major job. The question, one of the things for any athletic director is wherever they go, especially if they may not have roots in an area, is how are they going to leave a legacy? And they do that through coaching hires, and they do that through facilities, good or bad, right or wrong. At Nebraska, that's not necessarily in play right now. Scott Frost has a long-term contract with a lot of money. Fred Hoiberg's not going anywhere. Will Bolt's not going anywhere unless you give him a little bit more money. There are a lot of coaches that are in place that you can't make necessarily that signature hire. You have Memorial Stadium. That's not going anywhere. You're building the new facility already. You've got PBA. You've got a great baseball facility and the finest volleyball facility in the world. So some athletic directors are going to go, okay, I'm 49, 50 years old. What am I going to do at Nebraska to leave my mark? And that might be something where they go, I'm not interested. But somebody who's passionate about Nebraska and heading up a great program with a great fan base, that will be attractive.
Bill, about 60 seconds left here. I just want to get your take on Bill Moos's legacy as a whole. He said in his announcement this morning that Nebraska's athletics program is reborn and rebuilt with a solid, stable foundation for future success. Do you believe that to be true?
I think it's in a better place. To say that it's, stable right now and whatever else was in that statement, I'm not necessarily sure. But I think Nebraska is in a better place because Bill Moos was the athletic director at this time. I really do believe that. I don't care what the stories are, the rumors are, the gossip is, and all of that stuff. Okay, and you all know what's going on around, and people are talking, around the bar and the coffee shops right now. But the bottom line is, I think Bill Moos did a great job in again connecting that chair with the rest of the state. With the new facility coming in and the coaching hires that he's made, I do think Nebraska is in a pretty good position, much better than it was than the day he took over for Sean Eichhorst, which was an absolute disaster.
There he is, Bill Doleman. You hear him on NBC Sports covering the Olympics. Bill, appreciate you joining us on back-to-back days. I know the people at home love to hear from you, but we'll get caught up again next week, I assume, as we'll talk some more Olympics, yeah?
Absolutely, and one last thing. I'll take the job for half of what Moos was getting paid. All right? I know it's been a long time, but I'm in.
I'll check LinkedIn for the job for you. If I see it, I'll send it your way.
All right. Thanks, guys.
There he is, Bill Doleman, the pride of Fairbury, joining us, reacting to news that Bill Moos has retired as Nebraska's AD. That's the theme for the show today. And we'll get caught up with Derek Peterson after the break to get his take on this and who could be next for Nebraska. That's next. It's Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery.
Chime in 402-466-ESPN or email the show, Chris@HailVarsity.com.
Just try me.
Back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Back in on a Friday, it's Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Now Elijah Herbel in here somewhat solo as Will's bouncing out, heading to a Cole Swindell, is that it? The Cole Swindell concert at Pinnacle Bank Arena. Efforting Derek Peterson here. We'll see if Derek gets connected back with us. But I do just have a topic I want to hit on here for about the next 10 minutes if possible, if we don't hear back from Derek. And the topic is, has Bill Moos left Nebraska with a stable foundation as he said he did? That was the whole point whenever he was releasing that message this morning, the announcement saying that he would be stepping down, retiring, quote unquote. I'm going to do it one more time, quote unquote, retiring as Nebraska athletic director. So I think that begs the question is, has he actually left Nebraska with a more stable situation than what he stepped into? I think Nebraska fans as a whole can look at this situation and realize that, yes, Nebraska, the athletic departments are trending up whenever they were trending down whenever Bill Moos arrived after Sean Eichhorst. I mean, you think about the basketball program, it was stagnating with Tim Miles, made it to the NCAA tournament once, but after that only made it to the NIT twice and never won a game in the NIT. He was still getting in those top recruits, yet it just didn't seem like the success was coming on the court. Yet Bill Moos stepped in and he made that very, very tough decision to let Tim Miles go. I mean, Tim Miles was putting together winning seasons in a tough Big Ten conference, and he's now stepped in and installed Fred Hoiberg, the mayor, as head coach. And that was, I think that was some of the news that Nebraska fans heard during that cycle, saying, well, maybe Fred Hoiberg is on the horizon for Nebraska. There's been contact, and I think Husker fans even looked at that and went, okay, but how realistic is that actually? And now that Fred Hoiberg is in at Nebraska, you can see the product that he is building on that court. It feels like every single year he's bringing in more talented players than the team had the year before. There's guys that are out transferring because there's new guys coming in that are most likely going to take their spots because Fred Hoiberg is building his program, his beast with the Nebraska basketball program. So I think when you look at that program as a whole, yes, there's more stability. I don't want to veer away from the less money-making programs because I look at the Nebraska bowling team, and after Bill Straub retired, he installed a new coach who's gone and won a national championship with the bowling team. So there's more stability, continued stability there. The Husker baseball program has a guy in Will Bolt who, honestly, whenever I woke up this morning, I was expecting there was be more likely that we'd see news that Bill Moos has extended and given a raise to Will Bolt. Yet instead, we're getting the news that Bill Moos has been let go. So I think when you look at most of the sports at Nebraska as a whole, there is more stability, but the one that sticks in your craw as a Husker fan is the Husker football team. Is there more stability there? The record on the field would indicate to you, no. They're still not getting back to a bowl game. They're still sitting sub 500. There's still talk every single year across national media that Scott Frost is on the hot seat. Scott Frost is soon to be out at Nebraska. Yet, when you look at, what Scott Frost has, he's got a new facility that's being built. It also feels like he is starting to refine the type of talent he needs to win at Nebraska. And obviously you never know until the results on the field go. And I think now with Bill Moos being out, we're not sure who we're going to next, but with Bill Moos being out, Scott Frost does have a shorter leash. I think this is 100% the Nebraska powers that be saying, well, Bill, we don't think that you would have made a move if it was necessary to make a move. That's what I read into this. Because Bill Moos has said repeatedly that Scott Frost is his guy here at Nebraska, and he's going to give Scott the time it takes. And, I mean, personally, I didn't think that Scott Frost's job was all that in danger until he got those new facilities, those new ability to show what Nebraska has, to put Nebraska on a level playing field with the rest of the Big Ten. Now, with a new athletic director with no ties to Scott Frost, I mean, the name that is brought up a lot is Pollard out of Iowa State. That would be a big, big get for Nebraska when you see what Matt Campbell has put together at Iowa State. My senior year of high school, I went to a camp at Iowa State, and the first thing that Matt Campbell said to us when he brought us in for a little huddle at the beginning of camp was, all right, guys, I know I'm a first-year coach here, but I know how to win. When I was at, I think it was Tulane or Tulsa or one of the two, it was one of the T schools from down south, he said I was coach of the year. My staff and I were the coaching staff of the year down there, and we're going to bring that same success to Iowa State. He said, pay attention and listen because you're learning from some of the best in the country in my staff. And I think Scott Frost had the same mentality when he came into Nebraska. I think he had the mentality that his staff was better than anywhere else in the country. Yet, the results haven't been there. And the results are what tell it all. I mean, that's what Husker fans have been saying. Going to go to the phone lines here in a second. Don't have time to field the calls. I'm in here solo. But let's go to the phone lines. Who's on the phone lines with me?
My name is John.
John, it's good to hear from you. What's your take on this whole situation?
Well, let me turn my radio off. I guess my question is, you look at the basketball program, and I'm not saying that Holberg, hasn't have some pretty good credentials, but he beat out his grandfather as the third worst season in Nebraska history, and he had the first team in Nebraska basketball history to have 20 losses. So I don't see how we're sitting on this powder keg of great talent there or a great program and a long ways out. I mean, and I agree with you. I think Scott Frost is on a short leash right now. And I heard the same thing you were saying. They needed to get somebody in there that could come in and say, you're gone. And I don't think we're going to have a winning season again this year. I just wonder what you think about my comments.
Well, when I look at the basketball program, I think the difference between basketball and football is just the difference that one player can make. I know the NBA is a different sport completely, but I look at what Trae Young has done with Atlanta, and I appreciate the call, John, but I look at what Trae Young has done with the Atlanta Hawks, and it's one player who, without Trae Young, I don't think the Hawks are in the Eastern Conference Finals. Basketball is a different sport like that, and I think that Fred Hoiberg has done his due diligence in recruiting, and he's recruiting up there with some of the top teams in the Big Ten. Well, I think the results are yet to be seen. I agree with you on that, but I think the difference is that Fred Hoiberg has to a point that's with the top programs in the country, and that's what sets him apart from Scott Frost right now. Is while Scott Frost recruiting is still good, he's not up there with those top 10 in the recruiting rankings every single year. Whereas Fred Hoiberg's out there able to go and get Bryce McGowan's, for example. He's able to go snag some of the top JUCO talent in the world. In the country. And what we're seeing is early in their careers, these guys are making a difference. And despite the fact that the wins and losses weren't there, the guys that he's recruiting are coming in, making a difference and improving the team. And I think that's only going to continue. Obviously, the results on the court are yet to be seen. I said that before. I'll say it again. But I have faith that with what Fred Hoiberg was able to accomplish at Iowa State with almost the exact same formula, that he was able to generate success. The difference is that at Central Florida, Scott Frost didn't have a situation like Nebraska. He found success pretty instantly. We haven't had to see Scott Frost go through the adversity of 3 straight losing seasons. He found his formula quick at UCF, and he has not found the formula yet at Nebraska that is necessary to generate wins. I just think the formula in college basketball is a different formula in college football, because in college football, you have 30, 35 guys who are making a difference on any given Saturday. Now, can Scott Frost still find success? Yes, but I don't consider that stability in the football program whenever the football coach that you have installed has yet to find a formula that works in Big Ten baseball. I mean, you look at Will Bolt, and in his first year, he found a formula that worked and won in the Big Ten. And obviously, a big part of that was the seniors that he had on this roster this year. Yet, I have faith that based on what I saw from the youngsters from the baseball team, and this is the same thing I'm saying about the basketball program, that based on what I've seen from the youngsters there, those programs are still moving in the right trajectory. When you look at the youngsters on this Husker football team, you look at the offense, there hasn't been a young running back who has gotten himself settled into the Big Ten just yet. Since year one under Scott Frost, the running back room has been unsettled. You haven't been able to find wide receivers that have been able to make a difference in the Husker football program. And when the guys of the same talent level were making a difference for Scott Frost at UCF. So the difference is that Scott Frost has yet to show that he knows how to win in the Big Ten. And I think the other coaches of those big three major sports have shown that they can make a difference and figure out the formula to win in the Big Ten. The question becomes, where does Nebraska go next? A lot of good candidates, going to the Hail Varsity article, as they put up a good story of the likely candidates. Number one, Jamie Pollard, the Iowa State athletic director. Trev Alberts, big name around Husker football. Ed Stewart, another former Husker who has been the Big 12 Conference Executive Associate Commissioner for football. Rob Mullins from Oregon, who didn't find much success post Chip Kelly, but did find success with Mario Cristobal, at least so far. The thing that I read into this is that Ronnie Green said that he would be going on a national search for the next athletic director. You get those scary words of a search firm. Yikes. Saw how well that worked out with Sean Eichhorst. Saw how well it worked out with Mike Riley. When you turn to the search firm, they don't understand the values of Nebraska. So that's a little bit nervous to me, but it makes me think that Nebraska is not going internal for this athletic director role. And I think if they were going internal for this athletic director role, I think it's much more likely that you would already know who that next athletic director would be. Be it Matt Davison, be it Classy, who stepped in today to serve as interim athletic director. I mean, Classy's got a good track record, too. He was the athletic director for the University of Illinois at Chicago for a few years before he came to Nebraska, and since he's been here, he's been the de facto athletic director when Bill Moos is not in the office. So he's a great candidate, and the fact that he's only an interim, he has not been announced as the permanent, makes me think that Nebraska does want to go in a slightly different direction than what they have right now in the staff that was under Bill Moos. Get a little bit more into some of the candidates to fill this role next segment, as well as what's going down at a wild day at the College World Series. Again, it's Elijah Herbel filling in for Chris Schmidt today. It was me and Will Wilson. Will dipped out early as he's headed down to a concert at Pinnacle Bank Arena, leaving me in here solo to finish up this Friday edition of Hail Varsity Radio. Be back in tomorrow morning for the Saturday morning edition as Chris Schmidt and Mark Kranak both watching their kids play some sports tomorrow morning. So I'll be catching up with Brandon Vogel and Gary Sharp, as I'm sure they'll both have some opinions on this Nebraska athletic director situation, we'll call it, as well as who could be next. Again, it's Hail Varsity Radio presented by the Nebraska Lottery.
And we're back.
Fellas, you think we could listen to the radio lesson?
On Hail Varsity Radio presented by the Nebraska Lottery.
Yes! That's awesome! Getting close to wrapping up a Friday here on Hail Varsity Radio. It's Elijah Herbel filling in for Chris Schmidt today. Heard Will Wilson just a little bit earlier as he's off to go to a concert down at Pinnacle Bank Arena, leaving me solo here to finish up this Friday edition. Again, we heard from the coach, Gerry DiNardo, back in hour one, and we also heard from Schmitty back in hour one as he dialed us up for the first segment to give his thoughts on his day off, and that's just who Schmitty is. Also heard from the pride of Fairbury, Bill Doleman. That was to lead off hour two, as we've just had wall-to-wall coverage of this Bill Moos situation. Before we move on, I listed off some of the candidates for Nebraska's AD, and from what I'm hearing through the grapevine, all of this obviously unsubstantiated, it sounds like Jamie Pollard, Iowa State's athletic director, is high on the list for the next athletic director at the University of Nebraska. I'm sure if you know anything about Pollard, he would be high on your list at home as well, as he's been Iowa State's athletic director for the past 16 years. And I mean, look at what he's done. Iowa State has risen up from the depths of the Big 12, and now they're a contender every single year. Or at least just about every single year, it feels like, because Matt Campbell has done wonders with that program. And the resurgence of Iowa State, it really feels like started about 16 years ago. Talking 2005, 2006, whenever Iowa State started coming up and giving Nebraska a game, actually. Whenever it just felt like Nebraska would roll over Iowa State every single year. So Pollard obviously has a good sense of how to build a winning football program and if a coach is doing the right things. I mean, Matt Campbell didn't instantly find success at Iowa State. Gave him a couple years, and look what happened. Pollard is high on my list for that reason. I mean, he's got experience in the Big Ten. He was at Wisconsin, and he was at Maryland. That was before Maryland was in the Big Ten. But he does have that experience of being in the Big 12, and obviously it's a new commissioner now, and a little bit different organization to those Big Ten offices. But he's got the contacts. The problem with Pollard is that he signed a contract extension 2 months ago, which extended him through 2026. Which is a long time. I mean, that would put him in that position for 20 years, over 20 years, 21 years to be exact. It's a long time to be serving at one place. Does he love Iowa State that much? I don't know. But I think Nebraska needs to make a run at Jamie Pollard to be the next athletic director, because let's be honest, Nebraska is a better spot to be athletic director than in Iowa State. We heard from Bill Doleman at the top of the hour saying there's a reason that Bill Moos being out at Nebraska is national news. It's because Nebraska still does have that name appeal, that draw, that Iowa State might not have. It's going to be a tough get for Nebraska. The silver lining is this contract extension signed by Pollard is about $500,000 a year less than what Bill Moos was set to make next year. Could Nebraska come in and make a splash offer to pry Pollard away from Iowa State? I don't know the situation, but I have heard that he's going to be a top target for Nebraska coming up as they're in their search for a new AD beginning now. And with a search firm, I guess you never know. But this is what I've heard through the grapevine, that Nebraska likes what they see from Pollard. The question is he willing to come? Trev Alberts, that's a name that you're going to hear floated around. I'm not so sure about that one. His name was floated around back whenever Bill Moos was announced as AD. And I think what he's done at UNO has been fine. And I think better than fine. It's been good. He just recently built a new program for the baseball and softball teams. And he also has able to find financial stability with that UNO program, making a tough decision to cut the football program from UNO, and has done well. My question is he does not have that high-level athletic director experience that I think is necessary for an athletic director position at Nebraska. That's one of the top 20 spots in the country, in my opinion. In terms of the amount of money Nebraska is bringing in every single year, the amount of donations that you're just expected to get every single year, it's a top 20 spot. You can really focus solely on your duties as athletic director rather than fundraising, rather than worrying about, the little issues with the program. We heard Bill Doleman say sometimes you got to go walk out to the soccer fields and make sure that the soccer fields are playable. And the difference at Nebraska is you do have delegation that can handle that. It's not a small athletic department by any means. Could the athletic director go out and do that? Does Bill want him to? Maybe. But I think at Nebraska you have that ability to delegate, to let other people do things for you. And that's what sets Nebraska, a job like the athletic director spot at Nebraska, apart from a job like at University of Nebraska, Omaha. But with that hometown name, I think Trev Alberts is going to be popular. That's why Ed Stewart, he was the captain of that 94 national championship team at linebacker, and he's been part of the Big 12 senior management for the past 15 years. More than 20 years of administrative experience, and yes, he was also in the Big Ten, starting his career off at Michigan State. Those are probably the names you're going to be hearing a lot of over the next couple weeks. We'll see how fast Nebraska moves on this. Going to be getting more takes tomorrow morning on the Saturday morning edition. But before we get out of here on a Friday, I do want to discuss the crazy scenes up at the College World Series. As we had the NC State game earlier today, an elimination game for Vanderbilt. It was delayed as a couple NC State players, at least one, tested positive for COVID, putting others into the COVID protocol, meaning that they were not able to play today. NC State was down to 13 players at the time of first pitch. They had a backup catcher playing left field. They had someone who's never played first base in a game before playing first base. Just absolute ridiculousness, but it's the way it goes. That's what life in 2020 and 2021 has been. Starting second baseman JT Everett out for the semifinal, and I saw on Twitter that they even had their catcher wearing his leg guards out in the warm-up circle, which is a move you see in Little League Baseball because you don't have enough guys to go warm up the pitcher in between innings. Well, guess what? NC State didn't have enough guys to warm up their pitcher today. So in the on-deck circle with 2 outs, you have the catcher with his leg guards on, ready to go should he not get a chance at the to take the at-bat. Just wild scenes. This one just went final as Vanderbilt got a 3-1 win over NC State, forcing a winner-take-all game tomorrow. That should be a good time as Vanderbilt coming up out of the loser's bracket. They've got firepower, holding NC State to only 1 run today. It's on a sacrifice fly too, as Rocker just pitched to Jim, as you'd expect. They're going to have Leiter back on the bump, which is a tough draw for NC State, as they already got their 1 win over Leiter. What we'll see is, can they do it again? And I don't know, my confidence is not high. The momentum seems to be with Vanderbilt. They've found a way to win. And just at the end of the day, that Vanderbilt team is rock solid from top to bottom. Their starting pitching solid. They got relievers that are coming in throwing straight gas. They've got hitters that do enough. I guess the NC State game was the exception. They couldn't put across a run in that NC State game. But other than that, they have hung tough with every single team they've played, forced extra innings. They've walked them off. They got the win against NC State today. And if Vanderbilt isn't your favorite against NC State tomorrow, I'd be shocked. And if they're still not your favorite to win at all, I'd be shocked. Move forward to Game 12 tonight then. We've heard that first pitch set officially for 6:55 p.m. here Central Time, as first pitch moved back about 55 minutes. So it's supposed to be at 6 o'clock. It's been moved back. Severe weather still in the forecast, though, tonight. So we got Salt Dogs Baseball coming up here on ESPN Lincoln for our local listeners tonight. But looks like we should be fine for first pitch. We'll see if we can get through all 9 innings, though. Again, this is Hail Varsity Radio presented by the Nebraska Lottery, wrapping up a Friday edition next. Again, Hail Varsity Radio presented by the Nebraska Lottery.
Miss us?
Come here, brother. Give me a hug. Bring it in for the real thing.
We're on call for you. Catch the podcast at HailVarsity.com, the ESPN Lincoln app, or download them on iTunes.
Saddle up, partner.
Back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Wrapping up a Friday here on Hail Varsity Radio. This is a loaded show today. We had Chris Schmidt join us back in segment 1 to give his takes on the Bill Moos situation. He couldn't take a day off, even on his day off. And then we had the coach Gerry DiNardo join us as well. Both of those interviews going to be available after the show on the ESPN Lincoln Twitter page, as well as ESPNLincoln.com. Can't forget about Bill Doleman. He joined us to lead off hour 2. Again, you can catch that ESPNLincoln.com or on the podcast version via Twitter, ESPN Lincoln, or you can catch the full show wherever you get podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play, what have you. That's where you find Hail Varsity Radio, or just have Alexa play Hail Varsity Radio for you to say, hey Alexa, play Hail Varsity Radio. If you're listening to this next to a radio, next to an Alexa, I do apologize. Reminds me of the Google ad that was a couple years ago, where I think it was Burger King started off their ad by just saying, hey Google, tell me about the Whopper, and any Google home in the house would just go off and start telling you about the Whopper. And I think the FCC eventually ruled that was illegal and that they couldn't do that. But it's the point for the day. I don't think the FCC is cracking down on me right now. But again, going to be back in tomorrow morning for a Saturday morning edition of Hail Varsity Radio. Before we wrap up today, got to remind you about our friends over at West Blue Realty. If you're looking to make a move here in 2021, the housing market, well, it's volatile right now. Whether you're looking to buy a new home or cash in right now when home values are up so much, remember to give the real estate professionals at West Blue Realty a call today because they can help you out. They specialize in residential home sales in Lincoln and the surrounding communities, and they'll make sure your next move is a smooth one. And if you got agricultural land, well, the market for that's pretty volatile too. And they have experience selling agricultural land. They have an experienced auctioneer, can handle anything from live auctions, sealed bids, and general land listings. And they've sold land in Lancaster County and all around Odo, Seward. They can handle it. West Blue Realty, give them a call today. You can call Tom Luby at 402-540-3768 or Kelly Hofschneider at 402-202-2312. And remember, it pays to work with West Blue Realty. Before you make that next move, you got to ask yourself, what can West Blue Realty do for you? Or check them out, westbluerealty.com. Got about 45 seconds left here. And just want to get into this Bill Moos situation one last time to put a bow on it, because Nebraska's that search for the new AD starts now. The question is it going to be somebody else like Bill, somebody from inside the program? From what I've told you today, I'd say probably not. Just based on the way this whole situation was handled this morning, news coming out of the blue, no press conference, a la Bill Moos being fired despite it only being called a retirement. That makes you think that this is not Bill Moos going and picking his successor saying, okay, I'm ready to retire. COVID really wiped me out. I'm just done working this job. I think he still had joy for it, and I think he was caught blindsided by this. So the question becomes, where does Nebraska go now? We'll get into that a little bit more tomorrow morning on the Saturday morning edition of Hail Varsity Radio. Get Brandon Vogel's take, Gary Sharp's take. We'll also got a rewind coming up with Mike Leach. We heard from him on Wednesday. Again, that's all coming up on the Saturday morning edition of Hail Varsity Radio. No Chris Schmidt, no Mark Kranak, so I'll be taking you through that. Chris, back on Monday. We're going to be up at the College World Series from Zipline one last time as we kick off the championship series. Again, that's coming up Monday. This is Hail Varsity Radio presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Back at it tomorrow morning.